Hi guys, I'm Ethan and this is my virtual reality research project. I'm just going to be going over a few things about what's been done, what it is, what we expect to happen, and some use cases for job training. So first things first, we need to define what VR is. VR stands for virtual reality, and this means that the entire environment a user is interacting with is simulated. All inputs, all your senses should ideally be replaced by a digital version. Most of the time, this means interaction with some kind of head mounted device to eliminate any other visual sensory inputs, as well as a headset to eliminate auditory inputs. At present, technology doesn't allow for full replacement of things like touch and feel and temperature, but eventually that will change. So the first real stab at VR was something called the Sensorama, which is a pretty goofy sort of 80s version of the future kind of thing, built in 1957 by Morton Halig, which is a large booth-like machine that tried to create smell, stereo sound, vibrations, and things like wind for their use. This was later followed by the first real instance of a true head-mounted device. This was something called the Sword of Damocles, invented in 1968 by Ivan Sutherland. It was a stereoscopic display that showed you simple virtual wireframe shapes that changed perspective relative to the position of the user's head. In the 70s and 80s, we observed something called the Super Cockpit, which was invented by Thomas Furness for the US military. It was a simulated cockpit for a plane with maps, infrared, and radar imagery for training pilots. We also had the Aspen Movie Map in 1978, which was developed by MIT, and it was basically a really trimmed down version of Google Street View. With a couple of other blips like the Sega VR in 1991, which was never actually released but was intended to be a head mounted device for a video game console, we now have things like the Oculus, which started in 2010 as a Kickstarter project. And today we have HTC Vive, Oculus Rift, Google Cardboard, and basically every major tech company has their own version of a head mounted device now. Currently, the largest use of VR is still for recreation with things like the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive, uh, mostly driven by video game developers and their consumers. But we also have some stabs at medical procedures and operation of vehicles, and the military also uses VR for certain training scenarios. Zeroing on a specific usage scenario, we have job training. And VR has a lot of potential in that area for simulating situations that are either too expensive or too dangerous to replicate in real life, such as operating large machinery or training for high stress scenarios like a robbery. Currently, Walmart uses VR to train over 1 million employees in customer relations. Verizon uses it for simulating an armed robbery scenario to try and simulate high stress. And Stanford's head football coach used VR in a pilot program for training players and credits their 2016 Rose Bowl win to that program. In the future, we expect to see VR being used more broadly in scenarios where it's already been tested, like exposure therapy for people with PTSD, um, virtual travel, tourism rather, interactive education where students can interact with equipment and chemicals and scenarios that they wouldn't otherwise be able to. And most interestingly, we also expect to see them use VR for things like empathic training, but there's a bit of an uncanny valley scenario where it's hard to convince the brain that what they're seeing is a real experience, and this makes it hard for the viewer to really connect with the situation that's being simulated. So, empathy still to come, but definitely a possibility in the future. That's it. Thanks for watching.